leave a lot of emphasis on what the startup is trying to do, how big a problem that it is trying to solve, because solving any problem is hard. So why try to solve a small problem and a problem which is in its sunset? Then we try to see how resourceful these founders are and how you do more with less. And then we third try to see is that who else is there in this play, and at a subsequent stage, will we be picked up? Will this startup be picked up by bigger and better players who can give a much bigger traction and take them global and take them to places where they should thrive? So those are the three criteria which we generally look at when we invest. So our tagline, if you see in the logo, says the world is our oyster. We are only focused on outstanding startups run by very resourceful founders. And so therefore, we actually go to key destinations in search of outstanding startups. It helps us in three main ways. One is we get a fantastic common denominator of what's happening around the world. Secondly, it also helps us to get to the parties of better players, because they're good players, they won't just take your money. So you have to be actually talking your way through it to get to the investment. And then the third thing that happens is that it helps us stitch together a string of pearls where we can assimilate then startups who can actually ride on each other. Like for example, recently we are looking into a deal. The area that this startup works into actually is one area where a week back in the review meeting, one of our startups was talking about hiring. So we tossed this company to them saying that, guys, go and look at this guys and tell me whether it works. So this is one of the best ways you can do the due diligence on the new startup. At the same time, you can help your existing startup. Technology as a layer cuts through all the verticals. So it's the platform plays that make sense to look at rather than just focus on a certain vertical. And then within the platform place, because ours is more a bottom-up curation, so we look for inflection point in the companies, because that's when there is a serious traction happening. Inflection point doesn't mean that they have to have a product market fit or they have to be post revenue. Inflection point can come many times in a company's journey. So we look at that. But again, it doesn't mean that we are not focused on verticals. We also do another kind of research, which is top down. And that's where we try to see the key platforms where real disruptive innovation is happening. It's not what the world tells you then. Rather, when you go out and tell that idea to the world, most people around you will tell you, even your wife, your father, your brother will tell you, it sucks, man. And that's where you have to really go back and with all humility see, it really sucks? Or is it that the challenge in that new idea that makes people feel sucks? Then break it down into individual components and see what, like if you have to reach to the 10th story, you can't just, unless you are a Batman or a Superman, can't go to the 10th story. You have to go climb one story after the other. Yes, it is very important that you have to find a product market fit, that you have to get some kind of attraction, because the proof of the pudding is in eating. But that's not to prove to investor, that's not to prove to your friends, that's not to prove to the community at large, but to prove to yourself. So if somebody says, do me a POC, if I am a founder, I'll go and tell him, okay, I'm more than happy to do your POC. Would you mind paying for it? And see what's their response. 10 guys may say, no, just get lost. Do a free POC, I'll do for it. We have invested in many companies where there has been no product market fit. But there has been some POCs going on, some paid POCs going on. We have actually gone and spoken to those people, and we could clearly come back saying that these are very big guys, and for them all these startups could be one night stands. But even then, you ask the right question, what are you checking in the POC? Why are you even doing the POC? And if you are paying, why are you paying? If you are not paying, why are you not paying? Those will basically tell you, where these startups are and where the market is looking at. At 4 billion, when Facebook wanted to buy, he didn't sell. He had to go to a lot of shit. But today, look at Snap. And what Snap did then, Facebook did then, went ahead to do Instagram. Much of that they have just copied from him. But look at him, his conviction not to sell it for 4 billion. And then from there, where he has gone now, and look at his market cap today. His investors must have told him you are an idiot. But somehow he had control over. Another thing, when you build a great castle, make sure you are in control. Nobody snatches. The investors, don't let the investors snatch control of your castle. That's very, very important. Otherwise, they will make you sell for nothing, even though you are doing a great stuff. No harm, no shame in sharing the idea, unless it really needs you to stay in a stealth mode. Apple is a classic example. But it's not that probably they have achieved something significantly more than those who haven't stayed in the stealth mode or have put their stuff out there. When you are transparent, when you are sharing, I think you get much more traction than otherwise. If you publish your things, if you are on Twitter, I think they all help. In fact, today's time, we have to stop listening or paying subscription money to Bloomberg and CNBC. All our learning is on Twitter and on YouTube. So I think that's the orientation as founders we must have. We must question every narrative of our world that has been handed down to us and see how much of that narrative in today's time and tide we need to retain and how much of that we need to discard and adopt new things. Creative destruction. So ideally, the size should be 2, sometimes even 3. So the CEO as the founder should be the one who is a dreamer. The CTO, the second guy, who should be a super resourceful engineer who can practically make everything that CEO dreams into reality out of thin air. And then in between is probably the COO, and he tries to tame the CEO to dreaming everything. Every day he comes back with 100 dreams. And then by the end of the day, maybe 99 or all 100 dreams are flopped. But I believe that, the real ideal combination is the team must gel together. The team must have complementary skills, and you really do not require super smart or nerds out there. And that's where all the look downs happen. Instead, what is more important is that the team must feel that, this is my area and I understand this, yet I may have blind spots. So when there is a constructive criticism, I'm willing to take that. It's not that the team is hunky-dory, they are always in honeymoon, never fights. But the thing is that they still can work together. They have mutual respect and trust for each other. That's the most important thing. And as a founder, I will always say you have to be extremely careful to onboard investors who doesn't understand your business, yet they want to put money. Similarly, like when I am going out and looking for investors for my fund, I really make sure those investors understand what we are doing. We are not cut and run kind of a play. We are here for 6, 7, 8, 10 years. I mean, every time we get into an investment, we try to see this: can this become an unicorn? Can this become a decacorn? Can this list itself? We have to go back to the cardinal and ask ourselves, what are we doing? How impactful is this? And why am I doing this? Is this because I have nothing else to do? Anything that you do it with precision and with a clear focus, and focus to me is follow one course until successful. Focus is not a word, as in English dictionary. To me, it's acronym. When a lot of people tell you that you are wrong and this way nothing will going to get achieved, probably you are right. So the big picture is very, very important, and to think big. I mean, can you become an unicorn with what you are doing today, with a decent amount of luck? Can you become, after becoming unicorn, a decacorn tomorrow? And then eventually, can you become a FANG, say in 15 years out from today, 20 years out from today? Remember, the new FANGs will not be a phone company, so to say.